Chairman. Director, good to have you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for the Bureau's work. I know it's a tremendous task each and every one of you deal with each day, and it's good to have a Georgian with us as well today. Just following up on cyber, that's one of my main focuses and lanes that I stay in, and you've noted it's a big part of your testimony as well, that the private sector faces ever-increasing threats each and every day. So while you're working with the private sector, is it safe to say that when you're investigating these cyber attacks that you're engaging the private sector and you're relying on them to cooperate with the investigation or to help gather information or to help with attribution? Is the private sector involved in that way as well?
Yes, I think in the cyber arena, probably more than maybe any other of the threat areas we contend with, the partnership that needs to exist and does exist between the FBI and the private sector is incredibly important. The reality is that the most effective defense against cyber threats is prevention and increasingly mitigation, right? In other words, as soon as there's been an intrusion, detecting it quickly and getting rid of it quickly. And that requires that collaboration. And there are a lot of things that we do in terms of providing so-called TTPs to private sector, providing information about different things that we're seeing, getting information from them about what they're seeing, forging relationships through a variety of programs, formal and informal, that we have so that we can have that bond. There's a saying that the best time to patch the roof is when the sun is shining, and that's the approach we're trying to take with the private sector in that space.
You acknowledge that the FBI, limited resources, you focus primarily on the high-level intrusions and state-sponsored attacks. So the private sector that doesn't meet that threshold, what tools, what resources do they have to help stop and prevent attacks or address the attacks? What do you recommend there? I feel like we're a little short.
Well, there is a swath. I think you've picked up on a very important point, which is in some ways where things like this RCFL that we were talking about with Congressman Adderholt is so important. There is a swath of cyber-enabled criminal activity that is affecting businesses that is essentially below the level of the most sophisticated stuff that the feds typically take on, but above the level that currently is in the range of most state and local law enforcement. Where these RCFLs fit in, and it's just one of many tools that we have, is that it's providing resources and capabilities to state and local law enforcement to sort of move up market, if you will, in terms of the kinds of things they can reach. And it's also, the old saying about teach a man to fish. We're training them at the same time, which then makes them even more effective, and they can train others in their departments. So in the long term, I think that will help us capture that gap that you're alluding to.
Well, you may be aware, I've been promoting a concept of active cyber defense, allowing the private sector to engage outside of their network to prevent an attack. And the Cyber Fraud and Abuse Act hasn't been updated in decades, and I feel like the private sector is limited in what they can do. I'd love a commitment from you to be able just to work with your team, your staff, to walk through some of the challenges, maybe walk through the policy I proposed and how we might be able to enable the private sector to have a few more tools at their disposal instead of a passive approach and additional defenses, maybe being able to actively defend their network. If I could just work with your team on that a little bit, I'd appreciate that.
We'd be happy to work with you and take a look at any ideas you have. I do think that that over the next 10 years, the partnership that's going to have to exist between law enforcement and the intelligence community and the private sector in the cyber arena in particular is going to be a significant paradigm shift, because otherwise we're not going to be able to stay ahead of the threat.
Right, ever-increasing threats and successful attempts every day.